I've been working out what I want to do for the motor mounts. My original plan was to use the original style mount that the Mustang had, but after I got them kind of mocked into place, building that flat piece or building a bracket that uses this kind of drop-in mount just seemed more difficult than I wanted to mess with. So I've seen this style before using roll cage tubing, which this is 1 3/4 tubing with 120 wall, which is I've got a tube bender, and that's what I used when I built my roll cage for my CJ7. And they sell bushings that for a I think these are for a Chevy pickup, that leaf spring bushings that perfectly fit this 1 3/4 120 wall tubing. And ProComp makes this. I think you can probably get various brands, but that's ProComp 69261 is this bushing kit, and that's enough, I think, to do both sides leaf springs on a Chevy pickup. So it comes with the bushings and these spacers that go in the center, and then this is tubing, it's not pipe. So as you can see, it fits in there just perfectly. They're nice. I can't even push those out of there. I'm gonna have to when I weld it, but tight fit. So I took the I've got the bracket off the engine, the factory bracket, and I've just made some tabs here that I'll finish welding on. So that'll bolt onto the motor, and then this piece will be welded solid to the frame, and then the motor just sits down on there, and you got yourself a motor mount. And this will allow me to adjust any angles. So here's just a piece of tubing. So just as an example, be something like that off the frame or whatever, and then I can reinforce this to the frame motor. I don't, depending on the mount and the engine in this with the Volare, whatever, front clip is a little wonky because the power steering box is so large that you can't put the motor dead center, and then it also interferes with building a mount, so you got to get kind of clever on where to come up to get to that mount, which I think I can come right across here. I'll probably put like a thick piece of tubing, maybe basically kind of make a frame rail for that engine mount tube to weld to, or I don't know. I've got a couple ideas. I haven't worked that out yet. So I'm about 2 inches to the passenger side right now. I can probably come back over to the driver's side a little bit more, but this is real common. Most manufacturers offset their engines to the passenger side. To me, it's caused more of a cosmetic issue. It's not a big deal. Like if I was going to run a big blower out the hood, it would be offset a little bit, but I've seen that all the time, especially on the Mopars. You know, you put a blower on a Dodge Charger, 69 Charger, it's offset a little bit. That's just the way that they're built. So it doesn't hurt nothing. I've got plenty of clearance where it's at. I might lower the motor down a touch more. These are the little factory manifolds off the Mustang. I'm not sure what I'm going to do long term. I'm kind of thinking of single turbo, so I'll probably leave these manifolds on just to get this thing running. I don't want to go spend a bunch of money on some nice headers that I end up not going to use later on, because I know these are not very good. They're better than cast iron logs, but these are restrictive. But as are the heads and the intake and several things on that. But you can put a turbo on a bone stock, especially a forged bottom end engine like this, and 100 horsepower plus without touching the internals, assuming the ring gaps, all that head gaskets are all good. But so I'll probably lean that way. Anyway. We'll that's a long ways down the road. We're going to get this motor in here, get it running and all that before I worry about any performance parts, and also the brakes, get things stopping and all that. So the transmission mount I'll probably do differently. I've got a regular S10 transmission mount to go on that S10 tail shaft, so I might make a tube cross member out of this stuff, but I think that mount will just mount to a tab, whether it's on a square tube cross member or whatever. That shouldn't be a big deal. And I just got to make sure the angles everything lines up, that the engine's parallel to the frame. I'll probably set this at a 3-degree pitch. That seems to be the common one. Although it's not carbureted, Most carbureted engines are at 3 degrees because of and then the manifolds countered 3 degrees, so the carburetor sits level. I did a bunch of research on the angles, and 2 to 3 degrees is pretty common OEM spec for engine. That way that you don't have a big transmission tunnel going through your floorboards. You got to angle it down a little bit to get that the tail shaft to get down underneath the vehicle. So as long as the rear end is at 3 degrees as well, it should make all the U-joints happy. You also want to get things lined up perfectly parallel front to back for U-joints as well. There's some interesting videos on YouTube watching the timing of basically the front joint and the back joint being out of sync with each other, as well as the degrees and the angles and stuff. There was a lot more to that than I realized. So there's some nice videos out there to watch if you're curious about drive shaft angles and U-joint angles and stuff like that. A little tech tip I want to throw in here, a couple of them. I'm welding thicker metal here. These tabs are thicker than the motor mount material, and when welding thicker to thinner, to get better penetration, I like to taper where I'm going to weld on the thicker piece. See that there? This allows for better penetration of the thicker metal to adhere it to the stick it to the thinner metal without burning a hole through the thinner metal. So I recommend doing that. The other thing I like to do when welding tabs like this, or like when I'm building a bumper onto a vehicle, is I usually put just a little bit of a spacer washer when I'm welding it. Welding tends to pull things together, so that gives me just a hair bit of clearance. And normally on tabs like this, when you tighten them up, it'll pull them in just a hair, so that clearance will go away. But if you weld something like bumper brackets to a frame, you can't hardly get it off there if you don't put a spacer on there, because it'll suck it right up to the frame a lot of times, and then you can't slide the bumper on and off. So you only need a hair, just a little bit of, that's thinner. That's not a regular washer. That's almost like a machine washer, I guess. Just to give a little bit of space. This is that motor mount, so I want to be able to get these in and out of there without fighting them too hard. So anyway, keep that in mind. Making some more progress on the motor mounts, working on the chassis side now. The passenger side's always pretty easy. You know, there's room and you can go straight off the frame. The driver's side of the steering box is where it's kind of difficult. What a lot of guys have done is just come out here with a piece of tubing or flat plate and, you know, build yourself up a mount. Since I have this tubing and a bender, I thought I'd go this route. And I think I'm gonna like it. I'll reinforce or run a piece probably over out of the frame and tie that all in. And I've got to build some gussets and stuff just to make that extra beefy. Probably I'll taper this back and make that look a little bit nicer. Not that anybody's ever going to see it, but at least keep it from packing full of water and garbage. But I think this is going to work out well, and I'll make the transmission mount probably the same, similar fashion, just a piece of roll cage tubing, 1 3/4 inch tubing, 120 wall across the frame, and then weld a pad on it for the mount. So my day tomorrow will probably just be working on finishing the welding on this stuff, and these are all just tack welded. Finish the welding, get them gusseted and all that, and then I'll set the motor back in there and work on the transmission mount. Thought I'd throw in a little tip here while I'm working on these motor mounts. One thing that I do often, and I see lots of other people do it, are cardboard templates. A lot easier to cut and fit cardboard and then transpose that to your metal pieces as you're going along. So most people probably didn't know to do that, but it's a handy little tip that if you don't do, it could save you a lot of time and effort. Here's the transmission mount I've come up with. Pretty basic. It's going to bolt onto the bottom of the frame, so the frame's going to come across here. So everything just bolts straight up from the bottom. That way, when I take the transmission and everything out again, I can just, you know, unbolt this and it just falls right out the bottom. Don't have to pry anything to get anything out. I just went straight across the bottom of the frame right behind the mount, and then I just drilled a hole and put this plate up on the mount, and then just tacked it all in place, and then removed it and added some gussets and stuff for a little more strength. I don't know if that's really needed, but flat plate in itself doesn't have a lot of strength, so a gusset goes a long ways into beefing that up. But I think this will be okay. I'll take and bevel these edges and stuff, since I know I'll just whack that thing when I'm crawling underneath that truck at some point, so I'll at least take the sharp edges off it before I stick it back up in there. Here's what the transmission crossmember mount looks like installed. So I just bolted it right to the bottom of the frame there. I think that'll work okay. Here we are from the front and side angle here. I've got the engine set in there on the new mounts that I built for that. See, we got plenty of clearance for the steering box and the headers. They're all gusseted in. Here's the passenger side. Got it all welded in there. So I think that ought to hold for no more than I'm doing with this engine, probably, you know, 300 horse ish around there. Nothing too crazy.